Good morning, RCP. Only a few more days until Pentecost Sunday when we'll once again be united in one place and in one accord. And oh, I cannot wait to worship and praise with all of you. Unstoppable. What does that word mean? Webster's defines it as being impossible to stop or prevent. In sports, UCLA coach John Wooden led his team to 10 college basketball championships in 12 years, including 7 in a row. In history, Alexander the Great, by the age of 30, had conquered most of the known world. In NASCAR, Richard Petty won 7 championships, over 200 races, 700 top 10 finishes. And in businesses, names like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs can all be described as unstoppable. During the Vietnam War, there's a story of Major Kettles. It was on the 15th of May in 1967. That upon learning that an airborne infantry unit had suffered casualties during an intense firefight with the enemy, that Major Kettles immediately volunteered to lead a flight of 6 helicopters to carry reinforcements to the embattled force and evacuate wounded personnel. Enemy small arms fire, automatic weapons, and mortars raked the landing zone and inflicted heavy damage to the helicopters. However, Major Kettles refused to depart until all helicopters were loaded to capacity. He would then return to the battlefield with full knowledge of the intense enemy fire awaiting his arrival to bring more reinforcements. And he landed in the midst of enemy mortar fire and automatic weapons fire that seriously wounded his gunner and severely damaged his aircraft. Upon departing, Major Kettles was advised by another helicopter crew that he had fuel streaming out of his aircraft. Despite the risk posed by the leaking fuel, he nursed the damaged aircraft back to base. Later that same day, the infantry battalion commander requested immediate emergency extraction of the remaining 40 troops, including 4 members of Major Kettles' unit, who were stranded when their helicopter was destroyed by enemy fire. With only 1 flyable helicopter remaining, Major Kettles volunteered to return to the deadly landing zone for a 3rd time. He leading a flight of 6 evacuation helicopters, 5 of which were from a different company. And during the extraction, Major Kettles was informed by the last helicopter that all personnel were on board and departed the landing zone accordingly. Army gunships that were supporting the evacuation had also left the area, but once airborne, Major Kettles found out that 8 troops had been unable to reach the evacuation helicopters in time due to an intense fire. With complete disregard for his own safety, Major Kettles passed the lead to another helicopter and returned to the landing zone to rescue the remaining troops. With no air support of any kind, he went back and saved those troops. All the enemy concentrated fire on that small little aircraft he was on. They shattered both front windshields and the chin bubble and was further raked by small arms and machine gun fire. But despite the intense enemy fire, Major Kettles maintained control of the aircraft and the situation, and he allowed time for the soldiers to make it back. Major Kettles was unstoppable that day, volunteering 3 times to go back into the line of duty just to save the men that needed to be saved. He and his team were unstoppable. But let's focus this on biblical characters who are unstoppable. In Esther 16, Mordecai is urging Esther to go before the king and try to save the people of Israel. In verse 14, Mordecai utters his famous phrase, "Who knows, maybe you were placed here for such a time as this." And verse 16 records Esther's response to Mordecai. She says, "Go gather together all of the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink for 3 days, nor nights or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so I will go unto the king, which is not according to the law, and if I perish, I perish." Esther made the decision to be unstoppable. She was not going to let anything get in her way. She found her purpose and pursued it no matter the cost. She knew that going before the king uninvited could cost her her life, but she prayed and she fasted, gathered her courage, and became an unstoppable force, and through that saved the people of Israel. The Bible is full of characters, full of these characters of men and women who are unstoppable in their beliefs and no matter what, pursued their calling with reckless abandon. Matthew ministered in Persia and Ethiopia after Jesus ascended to heaven, and most reports show that he was stabbed to death for preaching the gospel. Mark preached in Egypt and had a rope placed around his neck and dragged through the streets until he died. Paul was beheaded in Rome for preaching the gospel. On his trip to Rome, he was shipwrecked. He went through an awful journey, but yet the whole time he was still preaching to his captors about Jesus. David, who was full of righteous anger, slew Goliath. John was boiled in oil and survived and still preached the gospel until he was exiled to Patmos, where he had the revelation of heaven and end times. Joshua would let nothing stop him from taking the promised land. Stephen was stoned to death for preaching, and even while he was being stoned, he still preached. Nehemiah requested King Artaxerxes would release him to go rebuild Jerusalem. And they went and let nothing stop them, even so much as they would have, let's say, a shovel in one hand and a sword in the other, so they were always ready. I could go on and on about biblical characters, but RCP, as we're coming out of this quarantine, have you purposed in your heart to be unstoppable? Are you willing to fulfill your calling no matter what? Have you purposed in your life? Are you hot? Are you cold? In Revelation 3:16, Jesus talks about the lukewarm. He says, "So then, because thou art lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I will spew thee out of my mouth." We can no longer be on the fence. We can no longer play the part on Sundays and Wednesdays and act like hellions the rest of the week. There is coming a day when Jesus will begin spitting individuals out for being lukewarm. RCP in 1 Peter 2:9, it declares, "We are a chosen people. We are a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness and into his wonderful light." You have been called to be unstoppable. We are a people who are fueled by the Holy Spirit for one purpose, and that is to spread the message of Jesus and the love of Jesus Christ. Acts 4:12 says, "Neither is there salvation in any other name, for there is no other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved." In these perilous days of rampant and blatant false teaching spreading like wildfire, we must be unstoppable in spreading the truth. The lives of unstoppable Christians always point to Jesus. Does your life reflect Jesus at all times? Have you made the decision that Jesus is worth more than just a Sunday and Wednesday routine? Unstoppable Christians have a daily relationship with him. My marriage wouldn't be unstoppable and wouldn't work if I only talked to my wife once or twice a week. I think it's time we put on our big boy pants and admit that it takes more than 5 to 10 minutes a day to build a relationship with either our spouse or with Christ. And let's be honest, in those 5 to 10 minutes of prayer, it's usually something all about us. "Hey Jesus, here's a list of things that I need you to take care of for me. And when you get a minute, I need you to get those done." But like Pastor preached on Sunday, Enoch walked with God daily. Daily walking should be evident by the paths that are worn in our heart. If you're walking with God daily, you will become an unstoppable force. I know I'm talking to myself, but let me be transparent. Am I convicting myself in this devotional? Yes. I'm guilty of the 10-minute daily prayer with my laundry list of needs and wants. How can I be unstoppable in what my calling is if I can't make time for him? Our passions drive our time management. So what do you spend your days doing? It's pretty evident by what your passions are. Have you purposed that no matter what you're going to spend your time on, that it's going to be to build a relationship with Jesus? My little mother-in-law, who we'll all affectionately call Lola, in my opinion is an unstoppable spiritual force. My family lived with her for roughly 2 years, and every morning, good days and bad days, when it was easy and when it was hard, good health and bad, days when it was excruciating for her just to kneel down to pray, I would see her and I would hear her crying out to Jesus, reaching to touch the foot of his throne, to just revel in his presence, not asking for anything but just wanting to sit with him and be with him for a time. She is unstoppable. My wife will tell you that as a teenager she would beg her mom not to pray against the circumstances or something that she wanted, because my wife knew that if her unstoppable mother prayed, mountains would move for her. When my Lola's health began to wane, the enemy looked at her and whispered, "A storm is coming." But my unstoppable Lola looked at the enemy and said, "I am the storm." So RCP, what is stopping you from being unstoppable? Do you need to make more time for intimacy with Jesus? Do you need to make a purposed and courageous stand for Jesus? Are there things that you need to ask forgiveness for? Do you need to forgive? Do you need to fully surrender your wants and desires? If you're unsure, there is one place that always holds the answer. That's the altar. Pentecost Sunday is just around the corner, and it'll be the first time we'll be united in one place as a church body. Have each and every one of you purposed in your hearts that this service will be an unstoppable service? A while back, I saw a post on social media that said the devil does not fear a big church. He fears a united church. And I just want to add to that and say a united church is an unstoppable church. RCP, are we going to be the unstoppable church in Columbus, Georgia that reaches Columbus? RCP, let's purpose to be unstoppable. Let's begin that daily walk with Christ if you haven't already. I love you all, and I can't wait to see you this coming Pentecost Sunday.